Vladimir Putin threatening a possible nuclear escalation may not be the only thing to watch out.
Well, tonight, the nation's intelligence agencies are warning of cyber threats from Russia.
About one of the most significant national threats that we face. Because hackers recognize that the energy sector is our country's Achilles heel.
For years, Russia has launched destructive cyber attacks in Ukraine, and experts say the U.S. would not be immune to similar attacks right here.
It wouldn't take much to throw the entire country into darkness.
There's very few number of substations you need to take out in the entire United States to knock out the entire grid.
The report was leaked to the Wall Street Journal. It found the U.S. could suffer a coast-to-coast blackout if saboteurs knocked out just 9 substations.
It triggered a blackout for nearly 50 million people. Just think about what a cyber attack would do. It could be catastrophic.
Millions could be left without light, heat, refrigeration, water, phones, and internet.
The United States must prepare for cyber war against Russia.
I don't think there should be any doubt in anybody's mind that the cyber challenges we're talking about are not theoretical. This is something real.
Hi, I'm Paul Grabowski, and this may be the last time you hear my voice. According to top military officials and U.S. senators, the Russians are planning an attack on our fragile power grid. Now, in case you're unfamiliar, here's how our power grid works. This is a substation. There are 55,000 of them scattered across the United States, each one powering the most critical parts of our society: hospitals, airports, police stations, transportation, and water and food supply. And each one intricately connects to the next, like a giant row of dominoes. However, if just 9 of these substations get knocked out, all the dominoes fall, and the entire power grid comes crashing down. And I'm not talking about an hour-long blackout that causes you to miss a few hours of Netflix. I'm talking about hospitals going dark during life-saving surgeries, no phone signal during emergencies, no internet to get updates on this disaster, no refrigeration to keep your food fresh and your medication from going bad, no heat to keep you and your family warm, no air conditioning, nothing. America enters a blackout that, according to top military experts and government officials, could last for months or even years. Make no mistake, this attack would send the greatest country on earth back to the Dark Ages. But as serious as this threat is, I think the experts predicting it are dead wrong. I don't think the Russians are planning an attack on our power grid. I think the attack has already begun. And I have undeniable proof the trap is set. America is on its knees. The gun is cocked and loaded and pointed at our head. Putin's finger is on the trigger, and just one gentle squeeze will send our country spiraling into never-ending darkness. Don't believe me? A report covered in last month's issue of Bloomberg revealed a bone-chilling truth. U.S. utilities have recently found Russian malware, a malicious computer virus, inside not 1, but 10 of our critical substations, including one that powers a nuclear plant deep in the heartland of America. Now, this isn't your traditional malware that slows your computer down. It's a resilient venom that can instantly and permanently throw our country into a black abyss. And to my knowledge, our bureaucratic government, who, by the way, seems more concerned about protecting pronouns than protecting our country, has no clue how to remove this malware, let alone prevent it from spreading like a vicious virus. After all, we know how good our administration is at combating actual viruses. Let me say it again. We already know 10 of our critical substations are infected right now. How many more have been compromised that we don't know about? Do you really think that our current administration has inspected all 55,000 substations? Well, if there's one thing I've learned in life, it's that if it doesn't win elections, it doesn't get done. So how long do we have until Putin pulls the trigger? Well, according to top NASA scientist Dr. Richard Garwin, this attack could happen as early as next week. But I disagree. I think it could happen much sooner than that, especially in light of Putin's sudden and shocking maneuvers in Eastern Europe that have not only forced leading nations to the brink of World War III, but have diplomacy experts questioning Putin's mental health and wondering if he will make good on his deadly promise. However, if this video is still playing, there's still hope if you act quickly. In the next 60 seconds, I'm going to show you the one tiny tweak I've made to my circuit breaker to safeguard my home and my family from Putin's deadly threat. And thanks to this one tiny tweak, I've been able to move my electricity completely off-grid. My home no longer depends on the same power source the Russians have already infiltrated. And no, I'm not talking about solar panels or backup generators. I'm talking about something easier than setting up a tent. You don't need any electrical experience, and it takes no time at all, which is very good news because time is running out. So stick around, because in just a minute, I'm going to show you exactly how to set this up using nothing but 3 dead batteries and a half a cup of distilled vinegar. So please, watch until the very end. It could be your last chance to do it before the lights go out. Let's begin. As I've said before, my name is Paul Grabowski. I'm a master plumber, born and raised in Artesia, New Mexico. Life here has been pretty steady for the most part. What I'm about to reveal next is very important. However, I'll make it brief because, frankly, it's hard for me to talk about. As you may already know, New Mexico experienced one of the worst snowstorms in history this year. As a result, our home lost power and my wife and 2 young kids had 0 heat for 13 hours. It was the worst night of our lives. Because not only were we freezing and afraid, but we also lost our 8-month-old puppy, Bella. That day I made an oath to myself. I would never allow my family to be put into that situation again. This time we lost our puppy, but who's to say the next time it couldn't be one of our kids? I made it my personal mission to find a way to power our home and to give us as much electricity and heat as we needed without having to depend on the bastard energy companies. Because if I truly wanted to protect my family and guarantee our safety and survival in case of an emergency, God forbid, I couldn't depend on anyone, not our government, not FEMA, and certainly not the greedy electric companies. Because if there's one thing I learned, when shit hits the fan and affects a lot of people at once, you're on your own. That day, I immediately hopped on my computer and started hunting for solutions. But as I researched power alternatives, I stumbled onto something disturbing. A report that claimed how the recent blackouts in Texas and New Mexico were just the tip of the iceberg, and how there is a much bigger threat lurking beneath the surface, one that could sink our entire power grid literally overnight. Now, normally, I don't pay attention to this sort of stuff. I'm not a conspiracy nut by any means. But when I learned this report was written by national security experts, I knew I should take it seriously. These experts also claimed that our power grid, the backbone of our country, was built on an aging skeleton and was about to snap. As I dug deeper into these claims, I soon discovered that a power grid failure wouldn't even have to last long to cripple an entire country. Take Venezuela, for instance. A little over a year ago, they experienced a nationwide blackout for only 5 days, and it was sheer panic for months. Hospitals couldn't function, doctors couldn't use medical equipment to save lives, elevators went out, making it impossible to give patients the care they needed, and patients who suffered from minor ailments that could easily be treated otherwise died. And things still aren't back to normal in Venezuela. And as it turns out, these power grid failures have been happening more and more, even in the United States. In fact, between 2000 and 2004, there were 149 power outages across the country. But between 2005 and 2009, that number more than doubled. A total of 349 power grid failures were reported in an independent study from the University of Minnesota. And the worst part is, I had to dig this information out on my own, simply because the mainstream media isn't reporting it. Probably because our current administration either doesn't care or they don't want to incite nationwide panic. So, as usual, they've been sweeping these increasing blackouts under the rug. Then I found a recently declassified document from Homeland Security which strongly implied these recent blackouts were just the tip of the iceberg. See, due to the recent surge in terrorism, the risk of cyber attacks completely crippling America's power grid is at an all-time high. And it doesn't matter if these attacks come from Russia, China, the Taliban, or a small terrorist cell. If Homeland Security was right, then America has never been this vulnerable. As I kept plowing through the research, I stumbled on a leaked report from the FERC. That's the federal agency that regulates all of our electricity. It seems that terrorists have already begun probing for weaknesses in our outdated power grid. And the FERC seems to believe a colossal terrorist attack capable of completely wiping out our power grid and sending us into a black apocalypse could happen at any moment. In fact, they're referring to this event as Blackout Day. See, according to this report, there are over 55,000 substations in the U.S. that our power grid depends on. And if just 9 of them get knocked out, we could see a nationwide blackout lasting 18 months or more. This isn't some conspiracy theory either. It's leaked intelligence from the U.S. government. In fact, a growing number of U.S. senators have come out of the woodwork with their own concerns about this impending threat. They even held a conference recently where the top U.S. national security officials and other high-ranking politicians discussed the severity of this threat. United States Ambassador James Woolsey said, "A threat to our power grid from a terrorist organization is more serious than a nuclear threat." And Joseph McClellan, the director of the government organization that manages our power grid security, the OEIS, said, "When terrorists finally do topple our power grid, the damage could be so catastrophic it could quickly undermine the U.S. government, its military, and the economy, as well as endangering the health and safety of millions of Americans." And when McClellan was asked to give his professional opinion on how long he thought we could be without power once an attack finally does happen, he said, "For a period of years." Well, naturally, this sent chills up and down the spines of the U.S. officials at this conference. The next question on everyone's mind was, how soon could a terrorist attack on our power grid actually happen? And that's when NASA scientist Dr. Richard Garwin stood up and said, "It might occur next week." Can you believe that? As early as next week, every state, every city, every home in the United States could lose all of its electricity for years. And there is nothing our government can do about it. And what would happen if America actually lost all of its power? Well, according to Bridget Borge, the president of the NRECA, a power grid failure would have a severe impact on our hospitals, our transportation, and our fuel lines. And without these things, America would be crippled. Imagine living without electricity for the next 1.5 years or more. No lights, no phones, no internet, no refrigeration, no heat, and no water, all because every single one of these necessities depends on our brittle power grid. I couldn't help but think, what they're describing sounds like it could be 1,000,000 times worse than September 11th. I mean, this last year has already been crazy. How much crazier could things get? Would America turn into a real-life Mad Max movie if our power grid went down? Would people split up into small but ruthless gangs, wearing their own homemade costumes, carrying machetes and anything else they could turn into a weapon as they hunted for remnant power sources? Would the world as we know it revert to the Dark Ages? And I mean, the last Dark Age, which lasted 900 years, happened at the fall of the Roman Empire. And many experts believe that America, the last empire, is overdue for a fall. Could Blackout Day be the catalyst that ignites this collapse? And if America's power grid shatters, would energy become more valuable than water, guns, or gold? Would it become the new currency? I don't have the answer to these questions. However, I am certain of one thing. If these experts, many of whom are high-ranking government officials, were even 1% right, then not only would I need an alternative power source, but I'd need a bulletproof plan to protect my family as America gets thrust into the land of wolves. So I dropped everything and quickly began to scour the internet at a feverish pace looking for an alternative power. And within a few hours, I only found 2 potential solutions. The first of which being backup generators. Now, although backup generators might sound like a good idea, they have one major flaw. They need fuel. And I think it's safe to assume that once the power goes out, people are going to panic, and they're going to buy up as much propane, diesel, or any other fuel you need to run a backup generator. What's more, if Blackout Day lasts even a tiny fraction of the time government officials believe it's going to last, no amount of fuel will help. And I certainly don't want to store fuel in my home, where I could expose my family to carbon monoxide poisoning. And to add insult to injury, backup generators cost a fortune, about $15,000 a pop, so I scrapped that idea. The other option was solar panels. Now, not only are solar panels more expensive than backup generators, they're notorious for breaking down. So if I were to install solar panels in my home, I need to hire a maintenance guy at some point. And when Blackout Day arrives, do you really think the solar panel company is going to send a maintenance guy to my house? Hell no. They're going to be panicking like the rest of us. So I scrapped that idea too. I slumped in my chair and realized this was hopeless. Not only did I fail to find an alternative power solution to keep my family safe, but I was now terrified of our country reverting to the Dark Ages as a result of the upcoming Blackout Day. And according to those government reports, it wasn't a question of if, but when. I felt so overwhelmed that I just about gave up. And that's when I received an emergency call about a standard old basement leak that changed everything, because it led me to discover an incredibly powerful technology that would give me and my family safe, sustainable, and renewable energy for when we needed it most. I got a call one evening about a pipe leak from my brother-in-law, Adam. Adam is an electrical engineer just outside of Roswell. I don't know exactly where he works because he's pretty hush-hush about it, but I do know that even his wife isn't allowed on the property. When I arrived at Adam's home, I followed him downstairs to the basement. Knee-deep in water, I began fixing the leak as quickly as I could, but it wasn't quick enough. All the lights snapped off and we plunged into darkness. I knew the water had just killed the circuit breaker, but within seconds, the lights flickered and kicked back on even brighter, which made zero sense because the circuit breaker was now completely submerged underwater and there was no sound of a backup generator either. So I asked Adam, "Hey, how the hell are the lights still on?" Adam's eyes scattered around the room as he pretended not to hear the question, so I said, "Come on, man, we're family." I could see my words chipping away at his resistance. Adam hesitated but kept silent. Then, like a sledgehammer, I delivered one final blow. "Adam, if we never lost power, Bella would still be with us. And you know how much she loved you." Adam sighed, then shuffled over to one of the metal compartments on the wall, opened it, and pulled out a smooth metallic orb no bigger than a tennis ball. The orb radiated a vibrant blue pulsating light, which illuminated the weird cluster of symbols written on the walls, a solar system of hieroglyphics and complex mathematical formulas that made absolutely no sense to me. I couldn't tell if it was ancient Egyptian or some other far distant language. Who the hell was my brother-in-law, and where did this mysterious orb come from? I continued to drill Adam with questions until I finally got some answers. He explained how this soundless orb was called an infinity coil. It was based on Nikola Tesla's invention, the Tesla coil, and a new electromagnetic invention which works based on vortex mathematics. When Adam saw the dumb look on my face, he explained, just like how a magnet pulls metal towards it, the infinity coil uses the Earth's magnetic fields to literally pull energy out of thin air. This is the same technology used to power military aircrafts, NASA space engines, Lockheed Martin, and a lot of the impossible-to-believe propulsion projects at JPL in Caltech. Adam said it was thanks to this device he was able to keep power in the house despite drowning his circuit breaker. He also mentioned how this technology wouldn't be available to the public for at least 10 years. But no matter how hard I begged and pleaded, Adam couldn't sell me the exact infinity coil he had because he didn't want to get in trouble at work. Adam, I don't know exactly who you work for, and frankly, I don't want to know, but I'm guessing you're one of the few people who knows how vulnerable our power grid is, and you know what's coming. Adam took a deep breath, and I knew I had him. The next day, I logged into my computer and opened Adam's email, which had the subject line, "Don't share this with anyone," in all caps. It included detailed instructions on how to make my very own infinity coil. I quickly made a list of the supplies I'd need. However, I was skeptical. The supplies in Adam's email were so inexpensive that you could literally make this off-grid energy device for less than $120. And I was certain I could find most of the items lying around my garage or in a junkyard. But Adam said it's not about the parts themselves, but how the parts are configured that makes the infinity coil work so well. When I returned home from the hardware store, I immediately got to work, and after several grueling hours, taking only a few short breaks to get some food, I made my very own infinity coil-inspired off-grid energy device. It was time to test it. So I grabbed a table lamp, I plugged it in, turned the infinity coil on, and nothing. A complete dud. After a few more failed attempts, I called Adam to let him know his device was worthless, and the first thing that came out of his mouth was, "Did you connect the circuit protector to the infinity coil?" Boy, did I feel dumb. I thanked Adam and made the changes that very night. Then I tested the infinity coil again, and just like that, my wife's phone charger turned on. So did a few other items. My own infinity coil-inspired device was powering them all, and it was so quiet, too. Yeah, I was now ready to put the infinity coil to the ultimate test. So I simulated blackout day by cutting power to the house. And lo and behold, the infinity coil was powering our entire home. It was incredible. The oven, the fridge, the washer and dryer, the AC unit, and even heat. And boy, was it hot. We had to turn the thermostat down a few degrees compared to normal. And best of all, my home was now running on reusable, self-sustaining, infinite energy that was totally free. I was finally relieved because I was now certain that thanks to this device, I could keep my family safe no matter what. A blackout, a natural disaster, a total collapse of the power grid, and even the chaos as America descends into darkness. But I didn't care because I knew my family was safe. However, while at church one day, something strange happened. As the pastor read a line from 2 Corinthians, "Each one must give as he has decided in his heart, for God loves a cheerful giver," the power snapped off. and a switch went on inside me. I didn't even consider the repercussions of what I was about to do. I just ran down the street to my home and grabbed the infinity coil, and within minutes, the church lit up like a Christmas tree. However, as I made my way back to my seat, I got all kinds of stares. Nobody could understand how a device so small, so compact, could light up a room that size so brightly. It's at that point I felt a hand tap on my shoulder. It was my pastor. He looked at me, smiled, and said, "Son, that device is a gift from God. Thank you for sharing it." I could feel the weight of his words. And as I looked around the room, seeing all the innocent faces staring back at me, men, women, and children who had no idea of the impending power grid failure that could happen at any moment, I couldn't help but think, maybe everything that happened to me over the last few months happened for a reason. Maybe it was all a sign from God, a way to get my attention so I could help others prepare for the coming blackout day. Well, it sounds kind of crazy, but I felt a tremendous sense of responsibility to help not only my own family, but everyone, including strangers. And this is why I did what I did next. So I showed the congregation how to build their own infinity coils, a decision that caused a rift between me and my brother-in-law, Adam. And Adam, if you're watching this right now, I truly am sorry. But this decision was for the greater good. And I know in my heart that when Blackout Day hits and countless lives are saved, you and Trina will forgive me. Now, it wasn't long until folks in my neighborhood, including their friends and families, had free-flowing, off-grid energy as much or as little as they needed. And none of them were depending on the frail power grid. And over the next few weeks, people treated me different. They'd smile at me on the street. They'd stop and shake my hand and thank me. I even had an older gentleman drop his cane in the middle of the sidewalk just so he could give me a hug. In fact, my family is still receiving thank you gifts from strangers on a regular basis. Here's a photo of my porch. And it's kind of funny, I even noticed I was getting attention from the women in the neighborhood, which my wife wasn't too happy about. But that was nothing compared to the attention I was getting from people all over the country, asking me to help them build their own infinity coil. Before I knew it, I was spending almost every waking moment on the phone or answering emails from folks who were eager to protect themselves and their family from Blackout Day. And as much as I enjoy helping others, I'm only one man, and frankly, I was stretched thin. So I decided to think big. How could I get the infinity coil blueprint into as many hands as possible, as quickly as possible, without killing myself? It suddenly became clear to me what I needed to do. So I spent the next several weeks poring over all the questions people had about building their own infinity coil. And to make sure the blueprint was as simple and straightforward as possible, I recruited my 9-year-old son to test it. And within 45 minutes, Sam was charging his PlayStation with his own infinity coil. That's when I knew I had created a simple, easy-to-use system that not only shows you how to quickly and effortlessly build your own infinity coil to power virtually every part of your home, but also use it to not just survive, but thrive after Blackout Day. And that's when Dark Age Defense was born. Dark Age Defense is the only foolproof survival blueprint specifically designed to ensure you and your family are more than prepared for Blackout Day. Dark Age Defense not only takes you by the hand and shows you step by step how to build your own infinity coil and have it up and running in minutes, but it also reveals the critical steps you and your family must take in order to fully prepare for the aftermath. Imagine having peace of mind and knowing with full certainty that no matter how long our power grid is down, your loved ones will be safe. And imagine not having to rely on the power grid to keep all your appliances and electronics running for as long as you want. With Dark Age Defense by your side, you won't have to worry about facing any of the repercussions that come with a total collapse of the power grid. While other folks are scrambling to keep their neck above water, you and your family will live comfortably in your own self-powered, self-sustainable private oasis. And because the consequences of Blackout Day will go far beyond a shattered power grid, Dark Age Defense goes far beyond making your own infinity coil. Inside this proven revolutionary step-by-step system, you'll also discover the fully legal felony that makes the infinity coil 261% more efficient than any known power source on the planet, and how to use this technology to power a dead vehicle. Chapter 8. The first thing you must do when the power grid goes down. Do this immediately within the first 30 minutes to ensure your kids make it to their next birthday. Chapter 1. Do you really want to leave your family's safety up to chance when the lights go out? That's why in Chapter 6, I'm going to show you how to generate an invisible force field around your home with this technology. The instructions are surprisingly simple. Does size really matter? Discover the shocking truth and how it can help guide you to build the perfect size infinity coil for you and your family. Chapter 8. The number one most important thing to consider when powering your home. Do this wrong and the whole system falls apart. Do this right and you'll never have to worry about a blackout again. Chapter 5. Infinity coiled squared equals town hero? Want to discover the simple method for making 7 infinity coils at once in no extra time or cost? Then you'll want to turn to Chapter 7. Warning, please do not sell your extra infinity coils for a profit. Just lend them your copy of Dark Age Defense. Want to power your car, boat, or even a small building? Then you'll love the Cosmo Generator. This infinity coil cheat code literally pulls electricity from air. It sounds like science fiction, but it's real. In fact, its makers filed a patent for it in 1921, before they mysteriously died. Chapter 5. Protect your infinity coil from thieves using nothing but a pencil. This simple pencil trick will not only make your power source virtually theft-proof, but will give potential thieves the shock of their lives. Chapter 7. Fisher-Price Toy Hack. How to use a $5 Fisher-Price toy to build an infinity coil. Perfect if you're on an ultra-tight budget and need unlimited power ASAP. Just don't tell your kids. Chapter 7. The Infinity Coil's Biblical Origins. How the infinity coil proves, without a shadow of a doubt, that God does exist, and much, much more. In fact, because Blackout Day will disrupt every part of our lives, food, water, and of course electricity, Dark Age Defense is much more than a step-by-step system that takes you by the hand and practically builds an infinity coil for you. It's also your complete compass that guarantees you and your family have everything you need to navigate the dark times ahead. Dark Age Defense is only available on this website, and only for as long as I'm allowed to share it, which may not be for long. Remember, our power grid is so fragile it could collapse at any moment, and there won't be a formal warning. And when Blackout Day suddenly strikes, your ability to get your hands on Dark Age Defense and protect your family will be lost forever. At which point, the only option you and your family will have is to depend on the government for help. And we've all seen how that's worked out in the past. Dark Age Defense has already helped thousands of Americans, giving them not only peace of mind, but also a way to slash their energy bills so they can live life on their terms. It's even turned small farms in rural America into beacons of light that will not just survive, but thrive during the dark times ahead. Imagine being one of the only lighthouses in a sea of darkness. Imagine never having to worry about your little ones going cold or hungry because you've taken the action necessary to protect them. Imagine living in peace and comfort while the rest of the world anguishes in turmoil, and having more than enough power for you and your family, enough to help others in need around you. Just think how your family will feel when they know you've done everything you can to keep them safe and sound, no matter what happens once the lights go out. And best of all, even if the blackout lasts over a year, like many of our U.S. senators are predicting, Dark Age Defense will give you the confidence and courage you'll need when we enter a modern-day dark age that, according to NASA scientist Dr. Richard Garwin, could happen as early as next week. When you get your hands on Dark Age Defense today, you won't have to invest $1,500, which is what the average American spends on electricity each year. And you won't have to spend countless hours figuring out how to put together a reliable, self-sufficient power source. And like I said before, this isn't about the money for me. See, I don't think money is going to have much value soon. And that's because once Blackout Day hits, the US dollar will likely crash. And it's entirely possible that energy will replace it as the new currency. That's why the only reason I'm even charging people for this blueprint is to keep this website up and running, and perhaps, more importantly, to help get the word out to as many people as possible. Now, with that said, I don't want something as trivial as price to get in the way of the safety you and your family deserve. When I first released Dark Age Defense, I asked people what they would pay for this one-of-a-kind system, and many of them were offering $250. However, as reasonable as $250 is for most folks, and as much as that would help me get the word out even more, and even though Dark Age Defense could easily help you save over $1,500 on your energy bill this year alone, I know that $250 might still be out of reach for some people. So then I thought, why not cut the price in half and just ask for $125? I know most people can afford that, especially when you consider this system could save your family from power outages. So $125 is more than fair. But then I asked myself, is there anyone, even a single person, who couldn't afford $125 because it was too much money? And that's when I knew I had to go even further. So today, all I ask is that you make a one-time investment of just $67 as a way to help cover my website costs, so critically I can continue to get the word out as quickly as possible. For only 18 cents a day, the complete Dark Age defense system is yours. Just a few pennies to guarantee your family will live safely and comfortably once the lights go out. And the only thing I ask in return for practically giving you Dark Age defense is that you share it with as many people as possible. You see, since you and I both know what's likely going to happen, it's our moral responsibility to not only get the word out, but to also share the only solution with as many people as possible. Now, to get started, just click the button you see right now. From there, you'll be taken to a safe and secure order form where you can enter in your details and within 2 minutes from now, have instant access to Dark Age defense and be on your way to true energy independence and much, much more. So please, secure your personal copy of Dark Age defense while you still can, and join the ranks of countless other Americans who took action and took control of their destiny. Click the button you see right now. See, even though most people who get their hands on Dark Age defense have called it brilliant, so easy to use, a lifesaver, and even though some folks have called it a proven way to slash your energy bills, there's only so much Dark Age defense can do. I'm not going to sit here and promise that with this proven blueprint, you and your family will remain unscathed as our power grid collapses. Bottom line, Dark Age defense can't prevent blackout day from arriving. No one can, not even the U.S. government. For that reason, when you secure your copy of Dark